Good morning. It's great to be here this morning, and I want to thank Alan for the kind introduction. I also want to say how pleased I am that we could have got this the agenda a little bit moved around. There was some concern that the people wouldn't come if they put me on the list first. And because sometimes at home I realize that when they hold an event and I'm the speaker, if they tell people, then people don't buy the ticket as readily. So if we could announce that the Premier was going to speak in this slot, then here they would be, all here, ready to hear me speak. Now, I do ask someone to kind of watch the door because I don't want people to take advantage of it and in the back rows of leaving. But it is a privilege to be here this morning, to be part of this conference. As was mentioned, it's not my first ROMA conference. I've been here a number of times. Now, I want to thank Chair Alan Thompson and all this year's organizer for putting this event together. Obviously, I've been the chair 2 years, so I know how much work it takes to do that. I also want to recognize Ron Holman for his service as the chair up until the last election. So, Ron, thank you very much for your service. I congratulate you for bringing it all together so well, and I had the privilege of serving, as I said, ROMA twice, so I know how much work is required to make it happen. So many familiar faces out there, and I'd like to acknowledge my ministry's trusted and hard-working parliamentary assistant, Randy Pettipies, the member for Perth Wellington, who is also a veteran of this conference. Are you out there, Randy? There he is, way back there. Thank you very much, Randy, for all the work. Everything that, I shouldn't say everything, but most things that happen in our ministry, somewhere behind the planning for that, Randy Pettipies is there pushing me out. So I'm a little bashful to do that, but Randy keeps me going. And a special mention to my cabinet colleague, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, for the fine work that he's done with municipalities and for working well with my ministry to make sure that rural, small town, and agriculture is protected in all those things. So thank you very much, Mr. Clark. This is my 38th consecutive year of ROMA. Thinking back, I can remember the highlights of my very first ROMA conference. I remember clear as day that what the Bear Pit session was about. I remember what we were supposed to talk to the government about in our delegations. But I can say I can't remember the rural minister's speech. And I expect you won't remember mine after that long either. Since that first conference, I've attended wearing more than a few hats. For the first 14 years, I came as a municipal delegate. In 1994 and 1995, I was chair of the organization. Then I started attending as an MPP, as a minister, and as a critic. And now, in 2019, I'm back as minister again. I'm happy and pleased and honored to be appointed as Minister of Rural Affairs. Our government, our Premier, recognizes the importance of rural communities and how they add to the strength of this province. In fact, there's no stronger voice for rural Ontario than Premier Doug Ford. Since being elected more than 7 months ago, he has made rural concerns a priority, as they should be. And when the Premier talks about making Ontario open for business, it's for all Ontario, including rural communities. By creating the conditions for greater prosperity, good jobs, and a strong future. And part of making Ontario open for business is removing regulatory roadblocks to open up the road in the drive towards a strong economy. We are removing unnecessary red tape that is standing in the way of job creators. It has killed competitiveness. It's strangling businesses and driving jobs and investment out of Ontario to places where the regulatory burdens are less. In rural Ontario, red tape is weighing down farmers, costing them extra time, money, and headaches, and add no extra value. So we're making good progress in ridding this province of red tape while keeping the rules that safeguard our health and safety. And we're delivering on other priority concerns of rural Ontario. From relief to taxpayers to scrapping the Green Energy Act and reducing energy costs, fixing the hydro mess, and making Ontario open for business. When the Premier makes a promise to the people of Ontario, he delivers. And I want to take this opportunity to express my appreciation for the Premier and his excellent judgment in his choice for Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. Thank you, Premier, and I thank all of you here today. ROMA has always been a big highlight of the year for me, and I'm sure as it is for many of you. And this year is an extra special. It's the first ROMA conference since our new government was elected, and the first ROMA conference since many of you were elected and re-elected. Having sat on both sides, I know the challenges and the opportunities, and I know the importance of listening to you. I recall in the first couple of years when I came to Roma as a municipal politician, I came to speak to government. Now back as minister, by far the most important thing I hear is from delegates and to hear from delegates and to know what needs to be done. We're at Roma to listen. We welcome your thoughts and ideas so that we can work together in your communities. Roma has always been the leading voice for rural Ontario, advocating for municipalities and strengthening communities. And we want you to know, every person here, that your hopes, dreams for rural Ontario are a priority for our government. You matter. Every community, every town, every village, every hamlet, no matter how small, we want you to think big. Think big on how we can strengthen rural Ontario to ensure long-term prosperity and good quality of life for people in our communities. Every cabinet minister in our government has a sign on his or her desk that says, "For the people." It's a daily reminder that we were elected on a promise for the people. It's for all the people, and that includes local communities and local government. In recent years, rural Ontario was largely ignored by the provincial government. When their proposals went wrong, they would try to create Band-Aid solutions to fix the damage. We want to make sure rural Ontario's needs, your needs, are being heard and addressed. That's that you have a seat at the table to speak when policy is being developed. And you will. This conference gives you the opportunity to meet with our team, to discuss the challenges ahead, to share ideas, and to talk about your priorities. Whether it's the formal delegation or the important conversations in the hallways or at receptions, and some of those late-night mobile workshops are the most beneficial that you could be using. Roma is well known for bringing together municipal leaders from across the province to discuss the challenges and the opportunities for rural Ontario. It's valuable face time. I got me thinking about my many meetings last summer with municipal delegates at the AMO conference. In those delegations for me, that provided the value at these conferences. In opposition, we held delegations to hear what we could do to convince governments on what you needed. Suddenly, as minister, we need the same advice on what we need to do. A lot more people want to talk to me now, and I'm happy to have found so many new friends. It's much easier to get somebody to come and talk to me as a minister than it was before. Humor aside, the municipal leaders I've had the privilege of meeting recently certainly understand the seriousness of the challenges we face. Just as your local governments must work within the budget, so do we. So I'm sure you can understand what we are up against. As a province, we inherited a severe fiscal situation with a $15 billion deficit. This was not our choice. It was left in our lap, and so we have to deal with it for the good of the province and for future generations. We're having to make some difficult choices. We need to ensure that the dollars spent deliver maximum value for Ontario's taxpayers. In light of our fiscal situation, it's important to stay focused on what we can do to bring about the most lasting benefit possible for rural Ontario with the resources that are available to us. This goal is very much in line with our government's approach to fiscal responsibility, and it goes hand in hand with our priority to create an environment where businesses can thrive and prosper. We want to make sure we're doing what we can to clear the roadblocks so we open doors for business and entrepreneurs to walk through. Since becoming minister last June, I've heard from many municipalities that over recent years they felt overlooked and their needs have not been given enough attention. It's the same thing that I heard during delegations at every single conference over the last few years. I'm proud to say we're changing that. Many of your MPPs sit around the cabinet table with me, and I can tell you, none of them are shy about sharing the challenges that your communities face and the opportunities to help. Rural Ontario is the backbone of our province, and our overall success depends on your strength. Protecting and enhancing the quality of life in rural Ontario is what being Minister of Rural Affairs means to me. But there is no cookie-cutter approach to meet these goals. The province and every rural community needs to be able to find creative approaches where we can. And along these lines, each rural municipality can determine how you want to tackle your own unique challenges. The solutions that work in Woodstock will be very different than those that work in Conmee and Napanee, but today I want to share my vision of what I would like to see for all our rural communities. I'd like to see safe communities where people continue to help each other and have that community spirit that made many of us choose to live in smaller communities. I want to see access to key services. I want to see farmers prospering and coming into town to support their local businesses. I'd like to see as many people as possible on Main Street have lots of successful and flourishing businesses. In fact, Main Street in rural communities are the only place that I want to make it harder for business. Right now, there are too many vacant storefronts in our communities. I want to make it harder for businesses to find a vacant store. But when they do, I want them to have great opportunities to prosper there. I'd like to see communities where entrepreneurs can succeed independently through hard work and taking advantage of great opportunities that you as municipal government and us as provincial government have created. I'd like to see rural businesses that have access to fundamental tools that they need to succeed, tools that are often taken for granted in our larger municipalities, but that are lacking in parts of rural Ontario. Resources like natural gas availability and broadband connectivity. Our proposed natural gas expansion program will ensure many more rural communities in our province have access to natural gas, which in turn will help you and your businesses grow and create jobs. Natural gas expansion is what the people of rural Ontario have been asking for, and we have listened. And expanding broadband connectivity is vital for businesses in rural areas to be able to function, to connect with suppliers and customers, and to compete in domestic and world markets. Students in rural communities shouldn't have to go to Tim Hortons to do their research. Now, mind you, there's nothing wrong with going to Tim Hortons. They need fast and efficient internet connection like people have in urban centers. And that's why we're working to bring them to rural communities. I'd like to see there's a good idea. I'd like to see rural communities where business operators can hire local skilled and trained workers in the communities where they live, and in many cases where the workers were born and raised. We need to foster rural communities where young people grow up, go off to universities or college, and come back because there are great opportunities for them in that community. We want graduates to be able to settle in rural communities for the good quality of life so they can live and work locally, contribute to the social economic life of their communities, and benefit from it in return. This is very personal for me when I think of my own family situation. I have 4 children. 2 live in Toronto and 2 in rural Ontario. I want the two who have chosen to live in rural Ontario to have the same opportunities as the two that live in Toronto. Having the option to live and work in rural Ontario should be just as attractive and viable option as doing so in an urban centre. Our government respects that rural communities know what they need to set their own course. We recognize that there are no one-size-fits-all solutions for the challenges that many rural communities face. That's why we are here listening to you about what you need to succeed. We want to give you the tools to make it happen. We want to help community leaders to integrate agriculture development in their economic development plans. We know that a prosperous agriculture sector contributes to your local economic growth. We appreciate the uniqueness of each rural community and that each one contributes to the strength of our province. If we apply strong work ethic and work together to tackle the challenges we face, I'm confident we can get through them and succeed. I'm committed to working with you to do this. Working with you and working together as partners committed to the health and welfare of our rural communities, determined, focused on the way forward. Because when we work in unison, our common hopes, dreams, and goals can be achieved for a better future, for a better Ontario. And I want to reiterate, I'm at this conference not to tell you I'm here to speak to you, but I'm here to hear what you have to say, what you can tell me to help so I can help you meet your goals. Friends, once again, thanks very much for including me today. I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to share my vision for a strong, successful rural Ontario. And I look forward to supporting your efforts however I can to help strengthen your communities. I want to say all the things that I see in rural communities. I'm not sure we can accomplish all those immediately, but I can tell you we can't accomplish any of them if we don't get started now. So thank you very much for having me here today, and we wish you well at this conference, and we look forward to working with you for a better Ontario. Thank you very much.